Broadcasting on Spice FM 94.4 in Nairobi, Mombasa 87.9, 102.5 in Kisumu, Malindi 97.7, Nyeri 90.9, 96.7 in Eldoret and 96.0 in Nakuru. We're live on KTN Home for the next 2 hours. A very good morning to you, our audience on KTN Home. And we also live stream the show every weekday morning on Spice FM KE, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. Speaking of Twitter, very many people have written to us telling us where they're locked in from. There's Gabriel. Where is Gabriel?
Kirapa Gabriel Cyrus is tuned in from Angurai, Teso North Logiri Clan, Omei Village, Kakuriki. I don't even know how to say it. Kakurikit. And it is a pleasure indeed. Did you know that there was a place like that?
I now know.
Now you know.
Now I do.
Angurai, Teso North.
Logiri Clan, Omei Village, Kakurikit.
Sawa basi.
Meaning, you've been given direction to the doorstep.
There you go.
Cyrus Gabriel Ekirapa, karibu sana to the show. CT Muga, as we begin the hour. What is today's proverb?
There are no shortcuts to the top of a palm tree.
There are no shortcuts to the top of a palm tree.
The thing you'll notice about palm trees, they don't really have branches.
They don't.
Not really.
And the palm wine tappers who actually go to the top of the tree, there are very few of them, but they're skilled in what they do. And the way for them to get to the top of the tree is actually half the work. To tap the wine is a little part of the job. But getting up the tree,
it's a feat.
It's the feat.
And there's no shortcut.
No.
You can't parachute onto the tree.
No, there isn't.
No.
And this isn't one of those trees that you're going to climb from the top.
You can't slingshot yourself onto the top of the
that's something
tree.
you could try if you're suicidal, yes.
No shortcuts to the top of a palm tree.
None.
Today is International Anti-Corruption Day. What does that mean, Ndu? It's a day to celebrate what?
Are we
Corruption?
celebrating?
Yeah, we can't be mourning.
Actually, yes, we can.
Yes, you can be mourning.
Yeah, but we can also be celebrating.
You can,
If it's an anti-corruption day, yes, you can be celebrating it.
To remember the fight, to be a little bit more spirited in the fight, is maybe something that you could be remembering, to say that, there's certain gains that have been made, or reminding countries around the world that there's certain things that they should continue doing to make sure that they keep up the fight to eradicate corruption. It could be also celebrating the wins that have been made over time, whereby 10 years ago, for example, you weren't really fighting it. Today, fighting it a lot better, coming up with solutions that previously you didn't have. So it looks like it's a commemoration, it's a remembrance, it's a reminder of things that should be done for the fight against corruption.
I would take the discussion even further. That you even have a day, and it's called an international day, means that you have come to understand corruption as being a fundamental issue that affects the lives of people adversely. Such that it's not something that you're just going to sort of like sneeze by or
glaze over.
No. You have to have a specific day when you think about it, and all the issues that you've raised, yes, come into being. In essence, give the discussion around it life. And let it not be something that just happens briefly and then is quickly forgotten. No.
So it's mainstreaming the issue
Yes,
of corruption.
Renewing the commitment.
I will say no more on the subject because my dear friend Eric here has hit the proverbial nail on the head.
Okay.
Mainstreaming it.
Hope the head bleeds. Let's talk to the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission. Speaking to the head of corporate communications, Philip Kagucia, our good friend, and he's on the line. Good morning, Philip.
Good morning, Eric.
Welcome to the Situation Room, Philip.
Thank you for having me back. Good morning to Ndu and CT as well.
Philip, good morning.
Good morning, Philip.
Yeah.
So let's start from here. What are we celebrating this day? Are we marking this day? Are we mourning anti-corruption?
Well, I would say probably the first day. We are celebrating the day. We are marking it. We are commemorating it. I think this is one of those things where you pause for a minute, you take stock, because the Republic of Kenya is a signatory to the United Nations Convention Against Corruption. And that international treaty which we signed is part of Kenyan law, because if you look at our constitution, our constitution says under Article 26 that whatever treaty Kenya signs is now part of Kenyan law. So this is part of what we will be doing going forward. It's exactly what you mentioned, Latif. You said it's mainstreaming. This is part of our culture now. Now, the institution that is given the responsibility to commemorate this day is EACC. And that is why we're coming together today, the 9th of December, and we've been doing this the 9th of December every year to commemorate the International Anti-Corruption Day. If I may just mention, Latif, we are doing this across the country, but this year in particular, we are holding this event in 3 counties. We are in Nandi, we are in Nyamira County, but the main event is in Kiambu County.
Why those 3?
Since we started celebrating or commemorating the International Anti-Corruption Day, we have been going across the country, and out of 47 counties, we have already hit 35. So it's a process of mapping the country and trying to reach the people who we haven't reached before.
And what are you trying to reach them with, Philip? When you say reach them, is it some kind of information you're trying to spread, continuing the fight? What is it we're reaching people with?
Absolutely. Even just this phenomenon of corruption, there are people who have not internalized it. When I think about corruption, I remember how we dealt with HIV/AIDS maybe 30 years ago. It took us a long time to actually internalize it. And if you go back in history and research, the very first instances of HIV/AIDS, that disease was attributed to all manner of things except human behavior. So it took a lot of time, a lot of effort for people to internalize, and that is what we're trying to do. We're trying to reach as many people as possible, make them aware of this phenomenon of corruption and how it is affecting their lives, and maybe persuade them to join us in the war against graft. I may just mention that the theme for this year is to recover with integrity, because as you all know, we have been ravaged by this COVID-19 pandemic. And corruption is insidious. It exploits a crisis like what we are going through. And the theme that came to us from the United Nations is recover with integrity.
When you think about corruption in this country, like we are saying, it's become such a normal thing that every new day we'll talk about corruption in one way or the other. There are things that the Anti-Corruption Commission will go out, like today there's a story that's out in the paper about a former senior police officer who's been penalized for participating in corruption. And then we have other corruption cases that are still ongoing. For example, you guys, I assume you're still investigating KEMSA. You still have others that you've been investigating. There's the medical supplies scheme, which the Senate has they didn't approve, but it's a matter that is under investigation. So many things that are happening in corruption. So many years since the first Anti-Corruption Commission was formed and Harun Moore was given the mandate to spearhead the fight, up to now, we are still seeing incidences of corruption. Shall we ever win this fight?
That's a very accurate observation. And maybe I can break it down this way. The people who are committing these acts of corruption, they're not aliens. They're not coming from Mars. There are people like you and I. And corruption as a phenomenon is so complex, it permeates every fabric of society. And how you fight it is multi-pronged. We have, for example, EACC has a mandate to combat corruption through law enforcement. That is just one aspect of it. We have another aspect, which is prevention. We have another one, which is education, training, and public awareness. We have another one, which is promoting standards. We want people to conduct themselves ethically. When you put all these things together, drop by drop, you start improving. And I like the fact that you remember EACC in its previous incarnations, when it was the Kenya Anti-Corruption Commission, it was Kenya Anti-Corruption Authority. At one point, it was even an anti-corruption police unit. Between those years, let's say 97 to 2020, let's say the last 20 or so years, what EACC was doing then is not what we're doing today. And that is why even if we don't speak Latif for 1 week, by the time I get back to you, I have new things. I have new things I can report, including the matter that you just mentioned, where the police officer was not just fined, he has actually been imprisoned for 1 year. This is for taking a bribe of 50,000.
Okay. Philip, I want to go back to how you're going around the country, because there's the talking to Kenyans about corruption, and like you said, hoping that they join the EACC in this fight against corruption. I've always been a proponent of letting people know what a Kenya without corruption would look like. Is this incorporated in your message as you go around and speak? Like, if we don't have corruption, this is what would happen. If we don't have the thievery of public funds, this is what would happen. Because I tend to think that if you paint a picture for people of what their Kenya could look like, then they're able to understand then what corruption actually takes away from them, and then would be able to demand that such a thing is eradicated. Is this involved, or do you involve this approach in the work that you do?
As I mentioned earlier, we have one of our responsibilities is to fight corruption, through prevention, and part of prevention is educating, training, and public awareness. And if you ever have the opportunity to sit through with our education officers and you listen to how they talk to the people on the ground, they start with what is corruption. Because sometimes something happens to you, you have a land dispute and a boundary dispute. And because it is offending you or upsetting you, you still feel it's corruption. We have to distinguish those kind of things with corruption per se. Then after what is corruption, what are the effects of corruption? Then after what are the effects of corruption, who do you turn to? And we tell people you turn to EACC, and this is how you can report. Now, what you're proposing is the aspirational version where you say, without corruption, this is what you do. But before you even get there, you have to show people this is what corruption is doing to you right now. Okay? If you can't get, if you can't travel properly because the roads are terrible, this is what corruption is doing to you. If you can't get medicine at your hospital, in the county, on the ground, this is what corruption is doing to you. So we have incorporated those things. The only difference is what you're proposing is aspirational, but we have to start with what people are recognizing immediately.
There's something that I have been thinking of even as you were speaking. The analogy you gave about HIV. The one aspect of HIV that made it difficult to deal with was the stigma. And if I look at corruption in this country, corruption has been destigmatized. Yes,
that will not come out positively, right?
It's
that's
not meant. It's
that's
not
how it's meant to come out.
Yes, but I don't mean it to come out positively. I mean it as I'm saying it, because if people consider corruption to be something normal, something even to be proud of, all you do is you create a new palatable name for it. You call it struggling, you call it hustling, you call it kutafuta. You find some name for it, but essentially what you're doing is illegal, what you're doing is wrong. And so it is a normal part of our fabric. So that even the analogy of tea is overtaken. So that children are born and they grow up in an atmosphere where they believe it is actually normal to solve your problems by issuing a bribe. That's why I call it, we've destigmatized it. It is not, this wasn't always the case. Now, moving from this particular point to the point where people can actually understand that at the very heart of literally every problem we have in this country, economic and otherwise, there lies corruption. Does your training, sensitization, education have a component that seeks to move people's mind from where we are currently to a point where we actually are stigmatized by the very aspect of corruption? Because right now we are not.
City, I really would like to appreciate that observation, because in essence, that is one of the biggest challenges in fighting corruption. Because as much as we complain about corruption and we want to point out that there's a traffic officer who's taking money, there's a kanjo guy who is harassing me in my kibanda, the truth is, internally, ourselves as individuals, we haven't rejected corruption. And I don't know if you're a religious person, City. There are those prayers where they say, do you
Yes, I'm a religious person. Don't add very to it. Just leave it at religious.
Yes, it is. So, I mean, if you're asked in church, do you reject Satan and all his, ills, and you say, I do, that is where we should be with corruption. But I think we pay a lot of lip service. We haven't really rejected corruption. And the best example I can give you is look at who our heroes are. Who are our role models? Which are these people we are celebrating? Is it the guy who, has 10 gold rings, 10 chains, he's walking around with a posse, he's showing you photos of his house, there's bottles of gold label whiskey, and those are our heroes. And, when you have the responsibility of fighting corruption, changing the hearts and minds of Kenyans is more difficult than all these other things we're doing. All these other technical solutions we can do, but changing the hearts and minds of Kenyans is difficult. And one of the things that perhaps going forward we can do is to change the narrative. Changing the narrative involves maybe looking for different heroes, looking for other people, celebrating people who do good things. Instead of all the time focusing on this person has done something wrong and has been put in jail, why can't we talk about somebody who's done something right and he has been recognized for it and he's been rewarded for it? Now, with regard to this International Anti-Corruption Day, these are some of the messages that we are filtering to the people, because we need the people on our side. It doesn't help when EACC has the responsibility to fight corruption and every message that comes out is a negative one. Even the people don't believe that we're making any headway. And that's why we appreciate you guys in the media, because you give us a platform to talk to Kenyans and explain to them what we are trying to achieve.
Is there anyone who you're going to those three counties and elevating and saying, let's celebrate so-and-so, this is a hard-working person and this is what they've achieved?
We don't have a mechanism for identifying individual persons as yet, but now, Latif, in my capacity, this is the sort of responsibility you Kenyans can give me and tell me, go back to EACC, talk to the CEO, Major Twali Mbarak, tell him that it is important for you to set up something like this. And we can do it. But just to mention, for example, where we are holding the main event in Kiambu County, one of the things we have noticed is we did a corruption risk assessment for them, I think towards the end of 2018. And it's impressive to go and find out that they are implementing what we recommended to them. Although they took a bit of time, they were a bit late. But if you contrast what Kiambu County is doing with what NYS did, you won't believe it, Latif, that between NYS 1 and NYS 2, EACC had actually gone and identified corruption loopholes in the institution. Yet what happened? They stole even more money the second time around.
Philip, one thing has always been communicating the gains in the fight against corruption. And I think we also spoke with the CEO at some point, and he said, yeah, that seems to be one hurdle that we have as the EACC in terms of telling Kenyans really how far we have gone with this fight. Is it something that you can improve on? I mean, it seems like you don't want to go tooting your horn everything that you do. But for something like this that has eaten really into the fabric of society, it is important then to talk about the gains that you have made. That's one. And you can maybe expound on that. But then also the larger, broader question would be, are we winning the fight against corruption?
Ndu, your observation is accurate in terms of we need to be talking to the people about achievements, milestones, and so on and so forth. And you'll agree with me that there's a huge difference. If we just take the last 12 months, if you take 2020 as a calendar year, the frequency of communication from EACC has gone up. And that is because we also have things to report. If you don't have anything to report, you keep quiet.
Right.
If you're recommending prosecution against high-profile people, like, for instance, I think we have 9 governors who are in court. Those are things which we can communicate to the people and they'll understand. If you've secured a high-profile conviction like the one for the Sirisi MP, again, you have something to talk about. And equally important is what we are doing now with the recoveries. And I don't know if you guys are aware that just yesterday we got a favorable judgment to recover a parcel of land. I don't know if you remember, City, where the old Kenya School of Law used to be on Ralph Bunch Road.
I remember.
Yes, so just across from there was a government house, and the principal of the Kenya School of Law used to reside in that house. But they did some magendo and the house was transferred to a company. And we fought years and years in court. And we finally got judgment just yesterday. And, imagine that the house had gone and it's valued at 700 million. Yeah, just under 1 acre with an old house, 700 million. That was just
Philip, this one I have
So
to
we have
ask. Now, the people who are involved in it, what's going to happen to them? Because this is what we need to see. Are they going to be treated like some of these individuals we've seen where they are arrested, taken to a police cell for 7 weeks as investigations are going on? Or are we going to sort of like ask them to write statements, go back home, sleep in their comfortable beds as investigations go on?
City, what happens is the way EACC works, it's like a toolbox. You know, a mechanic who has a good toolbox has many tools. So you can't change a flat tire with a screwdriver. You need all those other things. Okay?
You could
Now-
try, but you'd fail.
Yeah, you could. And sometimes when you look at the number of cases, and just bear at the back of your mind that we receive 3,000 reports every year. 3,000 reports, and EACC has barely 200 investigators. Okay? So 3,000 reports. So what you do, if you look at your toolbox and you say, this one, we need to prosecute. And I don't know if you remember when we were talking about some of the reasons we rely on to take up cases. We look at the value of what is involved. Like in this case, it's 700 billion. It's high value. Look at the personalities involved. If it's a governor, a member of parliament, a cabinet secretary, and then the public interest. But there's some technical challenges that you might encounter that will take you one path, which is one tool, as opposed to another. So, for instance, in this case, the path that you took is civil litigation to recover the asset. And it has just as big impact as prosecution, because you know what we've done? We have disincentivized the corrupt. We have taken away the thing that they were not sleeping trying to karabati. You know, they were trying to come up with this scheme, and after more than 10 years, we have taken it away from them. So it's a disincentive, yes.
Okay.
Okay, but you haven't said so. So those who are involved walk away.
Oh, sorry, Eric. Just to answer your question, the process is parallel. You have a forensic investigation. Forensic means with the intention of prosecuting. That runs concurrently with the civil litigation. The beauty of the civil litigation is the threshold for evidence is on a balance of probability. So we have more chances of success when we start with that. The prosecution is beyond reasonable doubt. It's a bit difficult. If you think about a case which started more than 10 years ago, do we still have the witnesses? Do we still have the evidence? You know, all those obstacles that might come up. So it's much harder to go that way.
All right. Philip, thank you very much for joining us this morning, and happy International Anti-Corruption Day to you and your team at the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission.
Thank you, Eric. Perhaps maybe I can leave our listeners with just one message.
Yes.
And this is that this fight against corruption is not just an EACC thing. It's not just a law enforcement agency thing or a government thing. It affects us all in one way or another. So we should be feeling some kind of way about either reporting it or highlighting it. So we have all the platforms. You can report even anonymously. We have our website, www.eacc.go.ke. So please follow us. If you see the portal, if you have a report, you can report it anonymously.
Asante sana. Philip Kagucia is the head of corporate communications at the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission. Thank you very much, Philip, and have a good day.